So, Ryan, again, you put together a list of Pennsylvania prospects specifically that fit in the class of 2026 to build on this impressive start to the next class. So, who are the names that you find most interesting in this conversation that you want to talk about here on the show?
So what was funny about this, Sean and I were working on, finding names one day. And then we ended up just landing on a ton of Pennsylvania guys. We're like, well, we might as well just make it an in-state kind of story because the vast majority of the names we kind of put together there were in-state guys. But I'm going to start with a guy that I don't think is talked about nearly as much compared to some of these other ones, and that's because he just kind of recently is emerging onto the radar, and that's offensive lineman Tavion Branch, who I know, T. Frank, you really were excited about the first time you saw him. Guy who camps at Penn State 3 times, progressively gets better every single time. Pretty good athletic numbers, too. I think that was something that Penn State wasn't sure about originally, and then when he consistently comes to these camps and consistently puts in the same numbers all the time, which by the way, also is really taking to the coaching that he gets from Troutwine, that made it an offer that Penn State had to hand out. And, for a guy, we talk all the time about, junior seasons and film and how much that's going to impact things. That'll be the case for Tavion, just like it is for so many of these guys. Yep. But I also do believe that he made a strong enough impression on them already that if he wanted to call up tomorrow, I think Penn State would have to seriously consider taking him. So, guy's really on the rise right now. Good kid who grew up a Penn State fan, and I think it makes a lot of sense that he would end up in this class. Again, let's see how he does over at Riverside. It's not a big program or anything like that. Up by it's that Wilkes-Barre, Scranton area, I believe. But from a camp perspective, really impressed, and you take coachability when you take the coaching 3 times in a row, and you really kind of show that progression every time you come back over a span of 8 weeks or so. That's what has, I think, Phil Troutwine and others excited.
There's no one size and body type that they recruit. As we talked about, Michael Troutman a little bit smaller, some of these big offensive linemen with big frames that are smaller, and then Tavion Branch, I think, was born gigantic. Like, he's 300 pounds already, 6'3.5". Obviously an interior player. Fitz, just from your observations, what do you think of Branch, and what do you think of the fit with what they already have in the class?
I think he reminds me of one of those guys that, we talk about after he commits and was like, oh, all the signs were there that he wanted to be at Penn State. So I think, and as a prospect, he's shown it at camp. I think he came to a camp, like a team camp that his team wasn't even at. Like, he came up to work with Phil Troutwine. So, and usually when those actions are there, it says a lot. So very curious to see how this one plays out. But if everything goes on that same plane that we think it's going to go now, I think that's very likely a member of that class of 2026.
And he's been to camp a ton, too. He camped as a freshman and a sophomore. He's been camped like 5 times now. Literally, he gave me a quote the other day. It was like, I came up there as a freshman, really enjoyed the camp, and told myself I'm going to get a scholarship from this place before I graduate. And I love the confidence. I love the consistency and coming in and proving yourself to get better, because let's be honest, that does not happen often nowadays. I feel like that's going downhill as far as guys who are that committed to camping. Go ahead, Sean.
I was going to say, he came to a camp, didn't get an offer, and then wasn't offended to the point where he didn't consider them?
I knew where you were going with that one.
All right. Moving on in state. Who do we got, Ryan?
Who do you want? I don't know. You can pick anyone you want.
While you were gone, I sort of ranked them just kind of off the cuff, just looking at it. And there's some sleepers in there. There's some risers. There's some guys that maybe aren't as high as we have ranked right now. I like Alex Haskell a lot. St. Joe's Prep defensive tackle. I think he is one of Penn State's higher targets on the defensive line right now. About 6'4", 240, 245 right now, and he's a bit of a wrecking ball. I mean, I know a lot of people have looked at Maxwell Roy and said that's the guy in there, but I think if you look at some of the film, I mean, Haskell, considering he's a year younger than those 2025 guys, he's a heck of a player. So I think that's a guy that I look to. I've got him just outside my top 5 in Pennsylvania. Like, it doesn't reflect that now, but like, I think he's a guy that ends up a 4-star player. So Haskell was up for the Lash Bash in July. He came up to camp, for all the chatter around St. Joe's Prep. He's kept coming back to Penn State. So I think that's a good sign. And I think it's interesting to watch what he's looking. What's that?
I was going to ask, does he play D end or D tackle for St. Joe's Prep? Because I know, like, watching him and seeing him at Penn State camp, he was a D end early, but it looks like, I mean, he fits the mold perfectly. Long, big, going to grow into his body, 6'4". That
Yeah, I mean,
Penn
look
State
at
D
that
tackle.
neck. I mean,
Right.
that's a defensive tackle neck right there. Yeah, he'll be 300 pounds at some point. But no, I think he plays a little bit of both, but I think more on
Okay.
the interior. Depends what they're doing on defense. It's tough. Like we said this about Cam Smith too. It's tough to evaluate the St. Joe's Prep defense because they're just so much better than everybody they play. Like maybe not everybody because they do play a really good schedule, but like when they get into Pennsylvania, it's tough to take that because they're just dominating guys. And Haskell was very good against IMG last year. He had I believe, a strip sack, a couple tackles for loss, which as a sophomore is pretty darn good. So really really excited to see his progress. And I think he probably ends up higher than all those 2025 guys in that class. It's probably crazy to say right now, but like I think he's that good.
Yeah, and he's a guy who like hasn't done a lot of camps and stuff like that. So like I feel like when you look at it, you look at 1-3's rated right now an 87, 15th in the state. I think he's just a guy that when you're putting together these early rankings lists, it's a lot easier to lean on that data that you're getting from Under Armour camps and Elite 11s and all these other situations, where he's a guy that I have no doubt in my mind should be higher than 15th in the state of Pennsylvania right now. So Penn State knows that. I mean, he may be. Again, I do this all the time, and Sean's like, "Why are we doing this right now?" But like, he may be their top defensive tackle target in this class, at least at the moment. There's a couple other guys. I think Cam Brickle's up there and a few others, but he is very, very high on the list. And for the record, last year when I saw him play in the state championship game, he primarily played outside, but there's plenty of film of him playing inside too. So I think you're right, Sean. He just kind of bounces back between the two, and 245 already, 2 years to go.
Have.
Yeah, I mean, I do kind of feel like he's more of an interior guy long term.
I talked to Amin Vanover about playing D end, having played D tackle early in his career and being an undersized guy and understanding where blocks are coming from and how to take on double teams and how to react to things. It's invaluable if you're going to be a D end or a D tackle to have that flexibility to understand how to rush from the outside or defend the run from the inside. Like, those are some valuable skills. If you're a D end and you understand how to pass rush and you get a one-on-one with a guard, that's super valuable that you have that training. I understand it's high school and it's not the next level of terms of technicality, but just those reps. We see guys who come in that have that kind of exposure to good football. They tend to do well at some point in their career. Fitz, I had phrased it to talk about guys in the region maybe, but if you want to just go down the list of guys in PA, because I know it's a strong class. So wherever you want to go with this.
Yeah, I got to get out of here by 11. But a guy that I'm looking at here, Jackson Ford at Malvern Prep, came to camp, earned an offer at camp, really good numbers. And then all of a sudden he blows up. Michigan offers. He's got some other offers in there. I actually had him above Cam Brickle. Brickle's an interesting one because you don't know what's there. He looked really good as a freshman, and then he did the T.A. Cunningham thing. He went to Santa Margarita in California, didn't play much, got hurt a little bit, and then now he's back at Malvern Prep, which I think is probably the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm very curious to see where he's at. But Ford, there's a lot to like there. He's a really athletic kid, and you look at I put together a top 12 in Pennsylvania, and 4 of them are defensive linemen. That's a very important cycle for Dion Barnes as he tries to replenish those numbers. So, and it's good to start at home and see if you can see what you can do there. So, very interesting kind of sleeper. Like, we're in 2026 and we're talking sleepers, which is just insanely stupid on my part. Like, I'm aware of the hypocritical nature of it, but Jackson Ford is a guy wasn't really on the radar coming into the summer, and now all of a sudden he's pretty squarely there.
Do you want to round us out? I think, Ryan, you got 2. Fitz, you have another one you want to talk about here to end the show?
Sure.
Talk all day, yeah.
YD Collier is another one for me. Came to camp, busted up camp. Just was really athletic, super athletic for a guy that's going to project as an edge that we have rated as a wide receiver. He's not a wide receiver, but he's got high top level ceiling as an athlete. Now, he's a long way to go as an edge rusher because he doesn't play the position very much. But you look at what he's able to do as an athlete, and Penn State has pulled some of those freaky defensive ends before, and he's kind of fits in that mold.